The last time we left Westeros, the realm was on the edge of total destruction. A king was dead, a prince had been hunted from the sky. An innocent child was murdered in revenge, dragons had begun falling from the heavens. And the Cold War between two former friends had finally erupted into a conflict that would change the Targaryen dynasty forever. Now, after 2 seasons of betrayal, revenge, and political chaos, House of the Dragon is returning for Season 3. But before the next chapter begins, there's a lot to remember. From King Viserys' final words and the secret prophecy that started everything, to the devastating blood and cheese assassination, the rise of Aemond One-Eye, the fall of Rook's Rest, and the arrival of powerful new dragon riders, we're breaking down every major event that led to the opening moments of Season 3. Whether you've forgotten some details or simply don't have time to rewatch 16 episodes, this is the complete story so far. This is everything you need to know before House of the Dragon Season 3. Let's return to the beginning of the Dance of the Dragons. To understand why Westeros is tearing itself apart, we need to go back to where it all started. Nearly 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones, House Targaryen stood at the height of its power. Dragons ruled the skies, the Iron Throne was secure, and King Viserys I Targaryen presided over what many considered a golden age of peace. But beneath that peaceful surface, a succession crisis was quietly taking shape. After the tragic death of his wife, Queen Rhaenyra, and their newborn son, Viserys was left without a male heir. Faced with an impossible choice, he made a decision that would change the future of Westeros forever. He named his daughter, Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, as heir to the Iron Throne. The lords of the realm swore oaths of loyalty to her, and for a time, it seemed the question of succession had been settled. But Viserys carried another burden as well. A secret passed down from king to heir since the days of Aegon the Conqueror. A prophecy. According to this vision, a terrible threat would one day emerge from the north, and only a united realm under Targaryen rule could survive it. This prophecy, known as the Song of Ice and Fire, became one of the most important reasons Viserys believed Rhaenyra had to inherit the throne. The future of the kingdom, in his mind, depended on it. However, the stability Viserys fought to preserve began to crumble when he remarried. His new wife was Alicent Hightower, the daughter of the ambitious Otto Hightower and, perhaps most painfully, Rhaenyra's closest friend. What began as a personal betrayal soon became a political divide. When Alicent gave birth to sons, many powerful nobles started questioning whether Rhaenyra should remain the heir. In their eyes, a male successor seemed like the safer choice. Over the years, the royal court split into 2 rival factions. Those who supported Alicent and her children became known as the Greens. Those who remained loyal to Rhaenyra became known as the Blacks. The rivalry poisoned friendships, divided families, and turned every celebration, council meeting, and royal gathering into a battlefield of political maneuvering. By the time Viserys reached the end of his life, the kingdom was no longer united. It was a powder keg waiting for a spark. And that spark was coming. That spark arrived on the night King Viserys died. After years of desperately trying to hold his family together, Viserys passed away believing he had preserved the line of succession. Rhaenyra was still his chosen heir, and as far as he knew, the matter had been settled. But in his final moments, a misunderstanding changed everything. Weak, confused, and speaking about the ancient prophecy he had shared with Rhaenyra, Viserys mentioned Aegon and the prince that was promised. Alicent overheard his words and interpreted them very differently. She became convinced that the king's dying wish was for her son, Aegon, to inherit the Iron Throne. Whether it was a genuine misunderstanding or simply the excuse the Greens needed, the result was the same. The moment Viserys died, a race for power began. While Rhaenyra remained on Dragonstone, unaware that her father was gone, the Green Council moved quickly. Plans that had likely been discussed for years were suddenly put into motion. Aegon was crowned King Aegon Targaryen. The Iron Throne now had 2 claimants. When news finally reached Dragonstone, Rhaenyra was devastated. Not only had she lost her father, but her birthright had been taken from her as well. Soon afterward, she was crowned by her supporters, creating a situation Westeros had never seen before. 2 monarchs, 2 courts, 2 armies, and neither side willing to surrender. At first, Both factions searched for allies rather than battle. Ravens were sent across the Seven Kingdoms, and noble houses were forced to choose between the Blacks and the Greens. One of those diplomatic missions would end in disaster. Rhaenyra's young son, Lucerys Valerion known as Luke, was sent to Storm's End to secure support from House Baratheon. But he wasn't the only Targaryen who had arrived there. Waiting for him was Prince Aemond Targaryen. The rivalry between the two stretched back years, fueled by family hatred, old wounds, and Aemond's loss of an eye. When Luke attempted to leave Storm's End, Aemond pursued him through a violent storm on the back of the largest dragon in the world, Vhagar. What happened next changed the course of history. Despite Aemond's apparent attempt to control the situation, the dragons themselves had other plans. Luke's dragon, Arrax, attacked. Vhagar responded. Within moments, Arrax and Lucerys were torn apart in the skies above Shipbreaker Bay. The first major blood of the Dance of the Dragons had been spilled. When word reached Dragonstone, Rhaenyra was consumed by grief and rage. The possibility of peace vanished. In response, Daemon Targaryen launched one of the most infamous acts of revenge in Westerosi history. He hired two assassins known only as Blood and Cheese. Their target was supposed to be Aemond. Instead, they infiltrated the Red Keep and forced Queen Helaena to choose which of her sons would die. Then, in one of the most horrifying moments in the franchise, they murdered the young Prince Jaehaerys in front of his mother. The crime shocked the realm. Both sides had now crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. What had begun as a dispute over succession was no longer a political conflict. It was a war fueled by vengeance. And the dragons were only beginning to enter the fight. With peace no longer an option, the Dance of the Dragons entered a far deadlier phase. The Greens controlled King's Landing and held the Iron Throne, while the Blacks possessed one crucial advantage. More dragons. But having dragons and using them effectively were two very different things. As the war spread across Westeros, both sides searched desperately for ways to strengthen their position. Armies marched, alliances shifted, and every victory came with a devastating cost. The conflict reached a turning point at the Battle of Rook's Rest. For the Greens, it was an opportunity to lure one of Rhaenyra's strongest supporters into a trap. Princess Rhaenys Targaryen answered the call, taking to the skies on her dragon Meleys. What followed was one of the most spectacular dragon battles ever seen in House of the Dragon. Waiting for Rhaenys were not one, but two enemies. King Aegon Tuonsin Fire, and Prince Aemond on the ancient giant Vhagar. The battle quickly descended into chaos. Meleys fought fiercely, proving why she was considered one of the most formidable dragons in the realm, but the odds were impossible. Rhaenys and Meleys were ultimately overwhelmed and killed. Yet the battle had another consequence. During the fighting, Aemond showed little concern for his own brother's safety. Aegon and Sinfire were left horribly wounded, their bodies burned and broken by dragonfire. The king survived, but only barely. And with Aegon unable to rule, real power shifted into the hands of the most dangerous man in the Seven Kingdoms. Aemond Targaryen. As Prince Regent, Aemond became the face of the Green War effort. Unlike his father, Viserys, or even his brother, Aegon, Aemond had little interest in compromise. He believed victory would come through strength, fear, and fire. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra faced a problem of her own. She possessed dragons without riders. The solution came from an unlikely source. Across Westeros lived people with traces of Targaryen blood in their veins, bastards and distant descendants who had never imagined they might one day ride dragons. These individuals became known as the Dragonseeds. What happened next reshaped the balance of power. Adam of Hall successfully claimed Seasmoke. Of the White bonded with Silverwing. And Hugh Hammer mounted Vermithor, one of the largest and most powerful dragons still alive. Suddenly, Team Black had gained several new dragon riders. But another important development was taking place far from the center of the war. In the Vale, Rhaena Targaryen finally encountered the wild dragon known as Sheepstealer. For years, she had dreamed of becoming a dragon rider like the rest of her family. Now, she appeared ready to claim a dragon of her own. As these new riders emerged, the balance of power began shifting once again. But the political situation was becoming just as unstable as the military one. In King's Landing, Alicent Hightower found herself increasingly isolated. The influence she once wielded over the court was slipping away. Her sons no longer listened to her. Aemond was pursuing the war on his own terms. and the kingdom she had fought so hard to secure was descending into chaos. By the end of Season 2, Alicent made a shocking decision. In secret, she met with Rhaenyra and explored the possibility of surrendering King's Landing in exchange for the safety of her family. It was a desperate attempt to stop the bloodshed before it consumed everything. But there was one problem. Unknown to Alicent, plans were already moving behind the scenes. The injured King Aegon to have been secretly removed from the capital and hidden away. Even if King's Landing fell, the war would not end. And as Season 3 begins, both sides are preparing for an even greater conflict. New dragon riders have entered the game. Powerful armies are marching toward battle. And some of the deadliest confrontations from fire and blood are finally about to unfold. The Dance of the Dragons is no longer a succession dispute. It has become a fight for survival. As House of the Dragon returns, the war is about to enter its most destructive chapter yet. Season 1 was about succession. Season 2 was about revenge. Season 3 looks set to be about total war. According to HBO, the new season will once again consist of 8 episodes, and everything we've seen so far suggests the scale is bigger than anything the series has attempted before. The first major event on the horizon is the Battle of the Gullet. For readers of Fire and Blood, this is one of the most important battles of the entire Dance of the Dragons. A massive naval conflict erupts as the Triarchy launches an attack against House Velaryon and the forces supporting Rhaenyra. Trailer footage shows dragons filling the skies above a fleet of warships, hinting at a battle unlike anything we've seen in the franchise so far. Among the riders expected to join the fight are Jaehaerys Velaryon on Vermax, Baela Targaryen on Moondancer, and Rhaenyra Targaryen with her newly claimed dragon, Sheepstealer. If the trailers are any indication, this battle could become one of the most visually spectacular sequences ever produced for a fantasy television series. But the battlefield isn't the only thing expanding. Several major characters are finally entering the story. One of the most anticipated arrivals is Daeron Targaryen. While his brothers Aegon and Aemond have dominated the conflict so far, Daeron has remained largely absent from the series. That changes now. Raised in Old Town, Daeron enters the war riding Tessarion, the beautiful blue dragon known as the Blue Queen. His arrival gives the Greens another experienced dragon rider at a time when they desperately need one. And he's not coming alone. Marching alongside the Green cause is the powerful Hightower army, led by Aemond Hightower. With thousands of soldiers at his command, Aemond's advance could dramatically alter the balance of power in the Reach. Meanwhile, from the frozen north comes another force that book readers have been eagerly waiting to see. The Winter Wolves. These are not young recruits seeking glory. They are hardened northern veterans who expect to die in battle and have chosen to spend their final days fighting for House Stark's allies. Led by the legendary Roderick Dustin, better known as Roddy the Ruin, the Winter Wolves are among the most feared warriors in the Dance of the Dragons. And if the adaptation remains faithful to the source material, they are going to leave a trail of destruction behind them. But perhaps the most important thing Season 3 promises is something fans have been waiting years to witness. The true cost of this war. Every battle, every betrayal, every act of revenge has been pushing the Targaryen dynasty toward catastrophe. What began as a dispute over who should inherit the Iron Throne is slowly becoming a tragedy that threatens to destroy House Targaryen itself. And the worst is still ahead.